This day in sports history. Hey, real quick, you've heard me talk a lot about the Sterling Soap Company over the past few months, and if you haven't tried out their soaps, I get it. It's not easy changing up your routine. But let me just say, if you give them a try, I'm nearly 100% certain you will have zero regrets. They carry not only bar soap, but shave soap, liquid body soap, body lotions, beard balm, lip balm, and a lot more. Plus, there are myriad scents to choose from. Their products are made with natural ingredients and scented oils, and they are committed to being environmentally conscious. And I always get a handwritten note on my packing slip, so I know it's been checked before shipping, and it's a nice little human touch in a world that seems to be going away from that. Give Sterling Soap a try today at sterlingsoap.com. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You can find more podcasts and more info at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's March 25th, and on this day in 1979, it was the most unusual ending to an NBA basketball game, a game in which several players officially and legitimately played for both teams. Now, to understand what happened on this day, I have to take you back a few months prior to November 8, 1978. Just a few weeks into the NBA season, the Philadelphia 76ers were hosting the New Jersey Nets. The Sixers had a pretty stout lineup with Dr. J, Bobby Jones, Mo Cheeks, Henry Bibby, Darryl Dawkins. The Nets had Bernard King. King was only in his second year at this point, but he was already drawing nightly double teams and still managing to score more than 20 a game. In the third quarter, King drove to the basket, and as he went up for a shot, there was contact. King was called for a charge, a call that he vehemently disputed. It did not take long for King to get a technical foul in addition to his personal foul. The problem for King, though, he already had a technical from earlier in the game, so at this point, he's ejected from the game. Still, expressing his displeasure, shall we say, he kicked a courtside chair on his way to the showers, and a third technical was called on King. But this one was called by a different referee named Richie Powers, and it was also illegal. Powers had a reputation for giving out technicals like candy from a Pez dispenser. This third tech on King brought Nets coach Kevin Lockery off the bench to question that call, but, in a very loud and shouty manner. Powers teed him up not just once, not just twice, but 3 times as well, which, again, also one too many. So now Lockery is off to the dressing room. Phil Jackson took over as the coach on the Nets bench, and of course with each tech call, there are foul shots taken. The Nets turned to Eric Money to fill in the scoring gap with King gone. The game went to double OT before the Sixers won 137-133. Money finished with 37 in the loss. But hang on a second. The Nets protested to the league office, saying the excessive technical fouls called by Powers were outside the rules and gave an unfair advantage to the Sixers and demanded a replay of the game. NBA Commissioner Larry O'Brien agreed. First, he suspended Powers for 5 games for failure to comply with league procedure. Second, they had to find a date for a replay of the final 17 minutes and 50 seconds. And since the Nets were playing again at Philadelphia on March 25th, that date was selected. But a lot can happen in 4 months. On February 7th, the Sixers and Nets made a trade with each other. The 76ers sent Ralph Simpson and Harvey Catchings to New Jersey, and in return got Eric Money and Al Skinner. Simpson, Catchings, and of course Money had all played in the game back in November. And now when the teams got together for the replay on this day in 1979, they were on the opposite bench. The league issued a ruling that the traded players could play in the game with their new teams. 5 minutes, 50 seconds were put on the clock to finish out the third quarter. Everything was reset to that point, meaning all the points scored by Money and everybody else were reset back to the point that they were with 5 minutes 50 seconds on the clock in the third quarter back in November. So the scoreboard was reset to read Philadelphia 84, New Jersey 81. The only other difference is there were 3 different referees. Powers was obviously not allowed to ref this one. The game progressed and the 76ers won this time too, 123 to 117. Now, if you take a look at the box score of this game, Money, Catchings, and Simpson appear under both teams as having officially played for both the Sixers and the Nets in this game. Money lost points though. Instead of the 37 he scored in the original double OT game, he officially finished with 27. 23 scored for New Jersey, 4 scored for Philadelphia. He was the only one out of the traded players to score in the makeup portion. And so, Eric Money went down in NBA history as the only player to play and score for both teams in the same game. After this one ended, the teams refreshed for the originally scheduled ball game for this date, a game the Sixers also won. Philly and New Jersey met later that year in the first round of the NBA playoffs, with the Sixers winning that series as well. On this day in 1961, there were a couple of memorable overtime games. Now, let's talk about this one that had a little more riding on it. A couple of Ohio teams met in Missouri to decide the national championship. This one featured the defending champ Ohio State Buckeyes and the Cincinnati Bearcats. The Buckeyes were the number 1 team in the country with a perfect 27-0 record and featured 4 future NBA players, including John Havlicek and Jerry Lucas, along with a guy who would become more well-known for coaching in the next several decades, Bobby Knight. The Bearcats were number 2 in the country, and they carried an 18-game winning streak into this one and had 3 future NBA guys in the starting lineup. The Buckeyes averaged 85 points a game in 61 and outscored their opponents by an average of 20 a game. They'd destroyed Cal in the previous year's championship game by 20, when the Bears were the second-best team in the land, and so it was kind of expected that they were going to do the same thing to the Bearcats. After the first 20 minutes, the Buckeyes had a 39-38 lead. That pace was a little bit faster than Cincy coach Ed Jucker wanted to play, and so he decided to slow it down in the second half and play a little bit more aggressive on the defensive end. They did not go full-on stall ball, but they did take a little bit of air out of it, and it worked. They held the Buckeyes to just 22 points in the second half. The game went back and forth for most of it. Ohio State led by 6 at one point, only to have Cincinnati respond with a run to take a 5-point advantage. With under 2 minutes to go, the Bearcats led by 2, but the Buckeyes got a big bucket from the future coach.
1:50 to go. Ohio State's Robert Knight with the ball. Thackers on him. To Noel. Back to Knight. He drives the baseline. He's headed for the bucket. A reverse layup. He scores a beauty. Robert Knight got in for an easy one. That's his first field goal, and it's tied up.
Those were Knight's only points in the game, but it tied the game at 61, and neither team scored in the final 100 seconds, and it headed to overtime. Cincinnati slowly took control in the extra frame and sealed it with a bucket in the final seconds.
It goes to Cincinnati. Thacker shoots. He hits at the buzzer. Thacker hits again. 70-65. Now Cincinnati still shooting. They steal the ball again. It's all over. And there's the greatest celebration you've ever seen on the floor right here.
It was Cincinnati's first national title in their first appearance. Bob Wisenhahn led the way for the Bearcats with 17 points. Jerry Lucas scored 27 in the losing effort for the Buckeyes and was named the tournament's most outstanding player. Now, there were a lot of people that thought Cincinnati's title win was a bit fluky. And so they came back in 1962 and won it all again. Now, there was actually a game played before the Ohio State-Cincinnati title game, and it was the old third-place game, and it was a wild one, as St. Joe's beat Utah 127-120 in quadruple overtime. It's tied for the longest tournament game in NCAA history, and there has not been one that's lasted 4 OTs since. Utah's Bill McGill scored 34 points and pulled down 14 rebounds. McGill was the first black player to play at Utah. St. Joe's was led by Jack Egan's 42 points and 16 boards. But here's the thing. St. Joe's win in this game was vacated because of the 1961 points shaving scandal. And I've talked about the 1951 scandal that swept up CCNY and other schools in the New York area, but this scandal dwarfed that one. In the 61 scandal, 476 players were implicated in fixing 43 games between 1957 and 1961. 3 of those players played at St. Joe's: Egan, the man who scored 42 in the win, Frank Mashevsky, and Vincent Kempton. Those 3 took a total of $2,700 to shave points in several games that season and were expelled from St. Joe's a month later. On this day in 1967, Evel Knievel made his first appearance on Wide World of Sports in Gardena, California. During the middle of a dirt track motorcycle race that had been pre-taped, they interviewed the 29-year-old Knievel and then showed his attempt of a jump of about 90 feet over 15 cars. It was the longest jump he'd attempted up to that point.
I missed a jump up in the northwestern part of the United States over 13, and I was hospitalized and laid up for nearly 5 months, and I sure hope that doesn't happen today.
Riding a Triumph motorcycle, Knievel first rode up the ramp to check it out before making his attempt. Calling the attempt that day for ABC was Bill Fleming.
Everyone here in the crowd has their eyes riveted on a young man by the name of Evel Knievel, who is set and ready in his yellow Daredevil leathers and new racing helmet to attempt the leap over 15 cars. You saw J.C. Agajanian there in the background, nervously pacing up and down. An exciting moment here at Gardena, California, even for the young ones. To soar through the air, airborne for about 90 feet, on a normal Triumph machine. And he's set to go. Takeoff, of course, very critical. He'll build up speed as quickly as he can, and here he goes. And he makes it. A beautiful leap as Evel Knievel gets the roar of approval from the crowd here, going beautifully over 15 cars.
Knievel made it look easy, which may be why he attempted the same jump 4 months later in Graham, Washington. Only in that attempt, he hit the final car and crashed, suffering a concussion. He actually tried it again at the same venue and crashed again, snapping his wrist, severely injuring his right knee, and breaking 2 ribs. Wide World of Sports would capture his most famous attempt and resulting crash when he attempted to launch himself over the Caesars Palace fountains on New Year's Eve later that year. Time now for today's Nothing to Do with Sports Fun Fact. If you've ever used the words big enchilada to describe the most important person in a situation, then you may be interested to learn that the 2-word phrase was popularized during the Watergate scandal. Nixon advisor John Ehrlichman used those words to describe U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell. Ehrlichman hoped Mitchell would take the blame for Watergate and get the heat off of everybody else. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.